Did anyone watch any videos yesterday, Bella? Kateri, did you watch any videos?
I did.
Did it seem different to you?
I did get better.
You said it uploaded faster, way faster.
And also it's converted to the format way faster.
Okay. Anybody? Kateri, Bella, show your faces.
No, I didn't watch any.
Were you here all day yesterday? I don't remember. I get lost in who's where.
Yes, I was.
Okay. All right, here we go. We are impressed with Sancho's governing. We are feeling sorry for Don Quixote, who's now just got his nose practically bitten and scratched off by a cat. Does anyone understand the bells and cats thing? There's some things that will be shrouded in mysteries forever, I'm afraid.
No, I think that didn't cat like represents something bad or a bad luck or something.
The cats and the bells came down on the rope and they swung into his room and there were cats running around his room and he was trying to get them out and calling them devils, and then one of the cat attached to his face and he said, "Let me fight him," and he's pulling out his sword and it's supposed to be funny. And the Duke's like, I'll get him, and Don Quixote's like, no, let me fight my own battles. And finally the Duke gets the cat off of Don Quixote's face, but his face is so scratched up it takes him over a week to heal. And he won't come out of his room. What is all that supposed to be?
Another representation for his adventure. Like only
I had just said that he hadn't gotten beaten up lately, that he was doing all the right things and hadn't gotten beaten up.
Now all of a sudden.
And all of a sudden there's bells and cats. What does that mean?
Can you say that like the waves? Like once you are in the top point and
I see what you're saying. Yeah, he had been doing well and then he crashed back down.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the spiritual life. All the writers say so.
Or daily life as well.
Yes, true. Chapter 48. Don Quixote's adventures with Doña Rodriguez, the Duchess's waiting woman, and other incidents worthy of record and of eternal remembrance. And so when last we met Sancho, I don't know, has he made any missteps? I feel like he's batting 1,000. This guy comes and he tells this retarded tale about this ugly woman who his son is in love with, and his son is disabled and the woman's disabled, and he's like, oh, but they seem to love each other and I think it'll be fine. Will you sanction it? Sancho's like, whatever. And he's like, oh, and by the way, we need money. And Sancho's infuriated and he kicks him out. Get out of here. I'm in possession of the governorship for less than a week and you think I've got money to give to you? Don't ever show your face here again.
You can move the chair a little bit forward because it's touching the board.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. Mary, will you read for us, please?
Chapter 48 of Don Quixote's Adventures with Donna Rodriguez, the Duchess's waiting woman, and other incidents worthy of record and of eternal remembrance. The sore-wounded Don Quixote was exceedingly fretful and melancholy, with his face bandaged and marked, not by the hand of God, but by the claws of a cat. Such are the misfortunes incidental to knight-errantry. For 6 days he did not appear in public, but on one of those nights, lying awake and watchful, brooding on his misfortunes and on Altisidora's persecution, he heard someone opening the door of his room with a key, and immediately imagined that the enamored maiden was coming to surprise his chastity and overcome the fidelity he owed to his lady Dulcinea del Toboso. No, he said in an audible voice, believing in his imaginary picture, the greatest beauty on earth shall not prevail upon me to cease my adoration of the lady I hold engraved and imprinted in the center of my heart, and in my inmost entrails, whether you are transformed, my lady, into an onion-eating country girl, or a nymph of the golden Tagus, weaving tissues of twisted silk and gold, or if Merlin or Montesinos hold you, where he will. For wherever you may be, you are mine, and everywhere I have been or shall be, I am yours.
Sorry, Mary, hang on. I'm thinking. I really want to figure it out. Now, my question is, have we ever in this entire tale ever heard Don Quixote described as exceedingly fretful and melancholy? Melancholy, sad, sorrowful. Exceedingly fretful and melancholy. Ever? Have we ever heard the Don described like that?
He's always like the other way.
The other way. He's always optimistic and saying God will protect. Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. This is a test of his faith. And it's being represented by a test of his chastity, right? Because he keeps thinking that all the women, because he's such a great knight, which is true, I think, that all the women want him, and so he knows there's temptation. And this is a severe form of temptation for a man. But actually, I think it's representing the test of his faith, because we've never heard him being fretful and melancholy, exceedingly fretful and melancholy. Also, what else is different right now?
Sancho is gone.
Sancho is gone. Very good, Nina. Sancho is gone. So he's in the dark. Just go with me just for a second. I don't know if I'm right. But in the dark night of the soul, every single consolation, says St. John of the Cross, every single consolation is taken away from you. So you are literally left in the dark with doubt and fear and melancholy, really. Some saints report that they're like that for years. Like they have no light that even says God exists. God allows them to be tempted to the point of not even knowing if they believe that God exists. Saints. And then they gradually come out of it if they persevere, right? And some people don't. But I feel like we're at the end of the book, and if I'm right that this whole beginning, middle, and end is the 3 stages of the spiritual life, and there's 2 dark nights. One is the dark night of the senses. One is where all of your physical consolations are taken away. This is when we see him going out in the woods and doing penance and to his body, right? Not eating, not drinking, not being clothed. The second dark night, the dark night of the soul, is a spiritual darkness. So we've got exceedingly fretful and melancholy, and Sancho's missing, who for all of his ridiculousness has been a companion, has been a consolation, has been a friend, has been a fellow traveler, a friend going in the same direction. Okay, these are my thoughts at the moment. Thank you for stopping, Mary. Continue.
As he concluded the speech, the door opened. He stood up on the bed, enveloped from head to foot in a yellow satin quilt, a nightcap on his head, and his face and mustache in bandages. His face because of his scratches, and his mustaches to keep them from drooping and fallen. And in this costume he appeared the strangest phantom imaginable. He riveted his eyes on the door, but where he expected to see the lovelorn and distressed Altisidora come in, he saw a most venerable waiting woman, with a white pleated veil so long that it covered and swathed her from head to foot. In the fingers of her left hand she carried a burning half-candle, and with her right she shaded her face to keep the light from her eyes, which were covered by a pair of enormous spectacles. She advanced with noiseless tread, moving her feet very softly. Don Quixote gazed at her from his vantage point, and imagining from her dress and her silence that this was some witch or sorceress coming to him to do him a mischief, began to cross himself most energetically. The apparition drew near, and when it reached the middle of the room it raised its eyes and observed Don Quixote's frantic exercise. Now if he was frightened at the sight of such a figure, she was equally startled by his appearance. For the moment she saw him so tall and yellow, in his quilt and his disfigured bandages, she screamed out loudly, "What's this?" With a sudden fright, the candle fell from her hands, and finding herself in the dark, she turned to go. But in her alarm, she tripped over her skirt and came down with a great thud. Then the terrified Don Quixote began to speak. "I can do what?"
Just, please. He's standing on the bed. He's standing on top of the bed. He's got, his face is bandaged. He's in some yellow bathrobe.
Wait, his face is bandaged?
His face
Like a
is
mummy?
and it's the middle of the night, and he's standing on his bed afraid because he sees this person in white, a white veil from top to bottom. What does he think it is? What would you think it is? A ghost. So as she comes forward with the light, I don't know what she thinks she's gonna find. I suppose in the middle of the night she's gonna think someone's sleeping in the bed. Instead, she finds this tall, skinny guy in a yellow robe with his face all bandaged, standing on top of the bed, furiously crossing himself. It's supposed to be funny. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I conjure you, phantom, or whatever you are, to tell me your name and to say what you want of me. If you are a soul in torment, say so, and I will do everything in my power for you. For I am a Catholic Christian and love to benefit all mankind. It was with that end I took up the order of knight-errantry which I profess, the exercise of which extends even to relieving souls in purgatory. The bewildered waiting woman, hearing herself thus exercised, judged Don Quixote's fright by her own, and answered in low and plaintive tones, Don Quixote, if perhaps your worship is Don Quixote, I am no phantom or apparition or soul in purgatory, as your worship seems to think, but Donna Rodriguez, maid of honor to my lady the Duchess, and I come to you in such a distress as it is your custom to remedy.
Oh.
we got
Tell me, Donna Rodriguez, asked Don Quixote, do you come to me perhaps on a meditation of love? For I must inform you that I am good for no one, thanks to the peerless beauty of my lady Dulcinea del Toboso. To be plain, Donna Rodriguez, if you will omit and lay on one side all love messages, you may go and relight your candle and come back. Relight your candle and come back. Then we will talk of anything you may ask or desire, saving, as I say, all incitements to love. I bring a message from anyone, sir, answered the waiting woman. Little does your worship know me. Indeed, I am not so extremely old as to resort to such child's tricks. God be praised, I have my soul in my body, and all my teeth and molars in my mouth, except for a few that I have lost to the cataract, which is so common in this land of Aragon. But wait for me a moment, your worship. I will go out and light my candle, and come quickly back to recount my griefs to the reliever of all griefs in the world. Without waiting for a reply, she went out of the room, leaving Don Quixote calmly and thoughtfully awaiting her return. But a thousand thoughts soon crowded into his mind on the subject of this new adventure, and it occurred to him that he had judged and acted improperly in putting himself in danger of breaking his pledged faith to this lady. Who knows, he said to himself, whether the devil, who is subtle and crafty, is not trying to deceive me now with a waiting woman, though he has not been able to do so with empresses, queens, duchesses, marchionesses, or countesses. For I have very often heard very wise men say that if he can, he will rather give you a flat nose than a hawk-nosed woman. And who knows whether this solitude, this opportunity, and this silence may not arouse my sleeping desires, and cause me, after all these years, to fall where I have never stumbled? In such cases it is better to fly than to await battle. Yet I cannot be in my senses to be thinking and talking such nonsense. For it is impossible for a white-veiled, fat, bespectacled waiting woman to move or arouse any lecherous thought in the most depraved beast's breast in the world. Can there possibly be a waiting woman on earth with wholesome flesh? Is there one of them in the world who is not impertinent, affected, and prudish? Avaunt, then, you rabble of waiting women, useless for any human pleasure. How wise is that lady who, they say, had two dummy ones beside her couch, with spectacles and sewing cushions, as if they were working, and found them as good as the real thing for sustaining the dignity of her hall. At this he leapt out of bed with the intention of closing the door and preventing Donna Rodriguez's entrance. When he got there, however, to shut it, the lady was already returning with a lighted white wax candle. But when she saw Don Quixote near to, wrapped in his quilt with his bandages and his nightcap for bondage, she was once more seized with fright, and retreating 2 paces, asked, Am I safe, Sir Knight? For I do not take it as a sign of modesty that your worship has got out of bed. I would ask you that same question, lady, replied Don Quixote. Tell me whether I shall be safe from assault and ravishment. From whom, or of whom, do you ask for this assurance, Sir Knight? Asked the waiting woman. From you and of you, replied Don Quixote, for I am not made of marble, nor you of brass, nor is it now 10 o'clock in the morning, but midnight, or even a little after, I imagine, and besides, we are in a room more close and secret than that cave can have been, where the bold, treacherous Aeneas enjoyed the lovely and gentle Dido. But give me your hand, lady, for I desire no greater security than my continence and modesty, and the assurance offered by that reverend hood.
Okay, hold on 1 more second. it's very interesting that Cervantes is noting that when a soul is older and wiser, the usual temptation tricks don't work anymore because you're older and wiser. But Don Quixote, in his wisdom, is always worried about being tempted to do something wrong. This is a good soul. And he knows that the devil never tires. So now he's thinking that it might be a trickier thing that the devil's trying to do to get him to fall. Is he mad? I'm asking you through the entire book. Is he mad?
No.
We might think it's ridiculous, all this nonsense, but he is on guard for his soul. And he's already been reduced because of the attack and because of his loneliness and because of his melancholy. He's kind of at a low point. And don't you know that's when the devil comes after you, but he's not unaware that it could be a trick. We could say, well, he's so ridiculous, it's just a waiting woman. Well, continue.
Saying which, he kissed his right hand, and with it seized hers, which he gave him with the same ceremony. Here Cide Hamante puts in a parenthesis and swears by Mahomet that he would give the better cloak of two he had to have seen those two walk from the door to the bed, thus entwined and linked. Finally, Don Quixote got into bed, and Donna Rodriguez remained sitting in a chair a little way from his bedside, without taking off her spectacles or putting down her candle. Don Quixote muffled and covered himself completely, leaving no more than his face revealed, and when the two were settled, the first to break the silence was the knight, who said, "Now, Donna Rodriguez, you may unburden yourself and disclose all the contents of your sorrowful heart and afflicted bowels. It shall be heard by me with chaste ears, and remedied by compassionate deeds." "That I believe," replied the waiting woman, "for no less Christian an answer could be expected from your worship's gentle and agreeable appearance. The case is, Don Quixote, that although you see me seated in this chair in the middle of the kingdom of Aragon, and in the habit of a decayed and forlorn waiting woman, I am a native of the highlands of Oviedo, and of a family which is allied with many of the best in that province. But my ill luck and the improvidence of my parents, which led to their untimely impoverishment, brought me, I do not know how or why, to the court of Madrid, where, for the sake of peace and to avert greater misfortunes, my parents put me in service as waiting maid to a noble lady. And I would have your worship know that no one ever surpassed me at backstitch and plain work in the whole of my life. My parents left me in service and returned to their country, and a few years afterwards they departed this life. It must have been to heaven, for they were very good people and Catholic Christians. I was left an orphan, depending on the miserable salary and scanty favors of such court servants. About that time a squire of the house fell in love with me without my giving him the least cause for it, a man already advanced in years, bearded and personal, and, what is more, as well born as the king, for he came from the mountains. We did not manage our affair so secretly as to keep it from the notice of my lady, who, to save us from scandalmongers, had us married with the license and approbation of Holy Mother Church, from which marriage was born a daughter, to put an end to my good fortune, such as it was. Not that I died in childbed, for I was delivered safely and in due time, because shortly afterwards my husband died of a shock he received, which would much astonish your worship if I had time now to tell you of it." At this she began to weep piteously, and said, "Pardon me, your worship, Don Quixote, I cannot help it. Every time I remember my unfortunate husband, my eyes fill with tears. God help me! With what dignity he used to carry my lady behind him on the crupper of a stout mule, black as jet itself. For they did not use coaches or chairs in those days, as they say is the fashion now, and ladies rode behind their squires. So much at least I cannot refrain from telling you, so that you may be aware of my husband's fine breeding and manners. A judge of the court happened to be coming out of the Santiago street in Madrid, which is rather narrow, with two of his officers riding before him, and as soon as my good squire saw him, he turned his mule's rein, as if meaning to wait upon him. And my lady, who was riding behind, whispered in his ear, "What are you doing, you blockhead? Are you forgetting that I am here?" The judge, out of politeness, pulled up his horse and said, "Go on your way, sir, for it is I who should wait upon the Lady Casildeda." That was my mistress's name. However, my husband, cap in hand, insisted on waiting for the judge. At this my mistress, full of rage and spite, drew a stout pin, or I think it was a bodkin, out of its sheath and ran it into his loins, whereupon my husband gave a loud cry and writhed his body so that both he and his mistress fell to the ground. Two of her grooms ran to pick her up, and the judge and his officers ran to her too. The Guadalajara gate was in an uproar. I mean the idlers who were around. My mistress came away on foot, and my husband ran into a barber shop, crying that his bowels were pierced right through. After that, his courteousness became a subject of gossip, so much that the boys used to chase after him to the street, and for that reason, and because he was rather short-sighted, my lady dismissed him. And I am perfectly certain that the grief of it brought on his calamitous death. I was left a widow and unprotected, with a daughter on my hands, who went on increasing in beauty like the foam of the sea. At length, as I had the reputation of being a fine needlewoman, my lady the Duchess, who had recently married my lord the Duke, offered to bring me with her to this kingdom of Aragon, and my daughter with me. Here in the course of time she grew up, with all the graces in the world. She sings like a lark, dances like a thought, capers in the country dance like a wild thing, reads and writes like a schoolmaster, and reckons like a miser. Of her cleanliness I say nothing, for running water is not cleaner, and now she must be 16, 5 months, and 3 days, more or less, if my memory does not fail me. To be brief, this girl of mine fell in love with the son of a very rich farmer who lives in one of my master the Duke's villages, not very far from here. In short, I don't know how it happened, but these two came together. He deceived her under the promise of marriage, and now he refuses to keep his word, and although the Duke my master knows it, because I have complained to him not once but many times, and implored him to command this farmer to marry my daughter, he turns a deaf ear and will hardly listen to me. And the reason is that this trickster's father is very rich and lends him money, and sometimes goes surety for him in his scrapes, so that he does not like to displease him or worry him in any way. So, my dear sir, I should like your worship to undertake the redressing of this wrong, either by entreaty or by alms, for as all the world says, your worship was born to right wrongs, to redress injuries, and to protect the unfortunate. Reflect on my daughter's orphan state, your worship, her breeding, her youth, and all the virtues I have told you she possesses. For by God and on my conscience, of all my lady's maids, there is not one who reaches up to the soles of her shoes. And as for that Altisidora, whom they reckon the liveliest and the freest, if you compare her with my daughter, she doesn't come within 6 miles of her. For I must say, my dear sir, that all is not gold that glitters, and that Altisidora has more boldness than beauty about her, and more freedom than modesty. Besides which she is not very wholesome, for she has a certain taint in her breath, and one cannot bear to be near her for a moment. And even my lady the Duchess—but I must be silent, for they say that walls have ears. On my life, Don Rodriguez, what is the matter with my lady the Duchess? Asked Don Quixote. Thus pressed, replied the waiting woman, I cannot refuse to answer your question with the whole truth. Do you observe, Don Quixote, the beauty of my lady the Duchess, the bloom of her complexion, and what that is like nothing so much as smooth, burnished sword? Those twin cheeks of milk carmine, which hold the sun in one and the moon in the other, and the graceful way she treads, as if she scorns the ground. Doesn't she seem to dispense health wherever she goes? But let me tell your worship that she may thank God for it in the first place, and the next 2 issues that she has, one on each leg, through which she discharges all the ill humors of which the doctor says she is full. Holy Virgin! Exclaimed Don Quixote, can my lady the Duchess possibly have 2 such drains? I should not have believed it if the barefoot friars had told me. Yet since Don Rodriguez says so, it must be so. But such issues and in such places must distill not humors but liquid ambergris. Truly, I believe that this opening of issues may be an important matter for the health. Scarcely had Don Quixote finished his sentence when the doors of the room burst open with a great bang. With a shock, the candle fell out of Don Rodriguez's hand, leaving the room as dark as the wolf's maw, as the saying is. And the poor waiting woman felt her throat so tightly gripped by 2 hands that she could not squawk, and someone else, without a word, very nimbly lifted her skirts, and began to give her a pitiful, hearty slapping, apparently with a slipper. And though Don Quixote felt this, he did not budge from his bed, having no idea what was the matter, but stayed quiet and still, fearing that it might soon be his turn for a beating. It was no idle fear, for leaving the belabored waiting woman who dared not cry out, the silent executioners fell on Don Quixote, and pulling off his sheet and his quilt, pinched him so hard and so often that he was driven to defend himself with his fists. And all this in a bewildering silence. The battle lasted almost half an hour, and the phantoms departed. Don Rodriguez gathered up her skirts and went out of the door, bemoaning her disaster, without saying a word to Don Quixote. He, mournful and pinched, perplexed and thoughtful, remained alone, where we will leave him, longing to know who was the malign enchanter that had dwelt him such a trick, but that will be told in good time, for Sancho Panza calls us, and the order of his history demands that we go to him.
What? What? It's getting weirder and weirder. What happened to Sancho Panza on the rounds of his isle? Nina. Chapter 49. This is wrong.
Wait, which page are we on?
We
Sorry.
are on page 779. You're paying
Right,
attention
yeah.
closely.
Yeah, sorry. We left the great governor vexed and angry with that portrait painting rogue of a peasant, who had been tutored by the steward, as the steward was by the duke, to make sport of him. But he held his own against them all, ignorant, coarse, and clumpish though he was, and said to those with him and to Dr. Pedro Recio, who had come back into the hall once the private matter of the duke's letter had been disposed of. I now plainly understand that judges and governors ought to be and must be made of brass, to endure the importunities of your men of business, who expect to be listened and attended to at all hours and seasons, and are intent only on their affairs, come what may. And if the poor judge doesn't hear them and attend to them, either because he can't or because it isn't regular time for giving them audience, they immediately curse him and slander him, bite at him, and even pull his family to pieces. Foolish man of business, stupid man of business, don't be in such a hurry. Wait for the proper time and season for your affairs. Don't come at dinner time nor at bedtime, for judges are flesh and blood, and must give to their nature what nature requires. Excepting only me, who give mine nothing to eat, thanks to the worthy Dr. Pedro Recio Tirtea Fuera, there, who would have me die of hunger, and declares that death is life. God give the same fate to him and all his breed. I'm speaking of quacks, for good doctors deserve palms and laurels. All who knew Sancho Panza were amazed to hear him speak so elegantly, which they could not account for, unless it be that offices and serious duties quicken someone's intellect as they deaden others. Finally, Dr. Pedro Aguero of Tirteafuera promised to allow him some supper that night, even though it might mean transgressing all the rules of Hippocrates. Hippocrates. With this promise, the governor was satisfied, and looked forward with great impatience to nightfall and mealtime. And even though time seemed to him to be standing still, at length the long wished for moment arrived, and they gave him for his supper a hash of beef and onions and some boiled calf's feet, rather stale from keeping. But he fell to it all with more pleasure than if he had been given Milan game, Roman pheasants, Sorrento veal, Muron partridges, and Lavajos geese. And during his supper he turned to the doctor and said, "Look here, Master Doctor, you needn't trouble in the future to give me choice things and delicate dainties, for that would mean wrenching my stomach off its hinges. It's used to kid, beef, bacon, salt, meat, turnips, and onions. And if it's given palace food by chance, it takes it with queasiness and sometimes with loathing. I'd like the butler to bring me mixed stews, as they call them, and the stronger they are, the higher they smell. He can shove in anything he likes, so long as it's good to eat, and I'll thank him for it and pay him one day. But let no one fool me, for either we are or we aren't. Let's all live and eat in peace and friendship, for when God sends daylight, it's dawn for all. I shall govern this isle without waiving a right or taking a bribe, and let everyone keep his eyes open and mind his own business. For I would have them know that the devil is loose in Cantillana, and if they give me cause, they'll see wonders. Just you make yourselves honey, and flies'll eat you." "Truly, governor," said the butler, "your worship is very right in all you say, and I offer in the name of all the islesmen of this isle to serve you with all diligence, love, and goodwill. For the mild manner of government which your worship has shown us in these beginnings leaves us no room to do or think anything which may redound to your disservice." "I believe you," answered Sancho, "and you would be a set of fools if you did or thought otherwise. Let them look after my feeding and my dapples, I say once more, which is the main point of the matter, and the most important. And when the time comes, let us make the rounds, for I intend to cleanse this isle of every sort of impurity, and of your vagabond, idle, and ill-conditioned persons. For I should like you to know, friends, that your vagrant and lazy sort are the same thing in a state as drones are in the hive, eating up the honey the workers made. I intend to favor laboring men, preserve gentlemen's privileges, reward the virtuous, and above all, respect religion and honor the clergy. What do you think of that? Am I saying something or cracking my brains for nothing? You are saying so much, Lord Governor, said the steward, that I am amazed to find a man of so little learning as your worship, for I believe you have none. Say so many things that are full of judgment and good counsel. For those that sent you here, and we that came with you, were far from expecting anything of the sort from you. But every day we see something new in the world. Jokes are turned to earnest, and mockers find themselves mocked.
Hold on, honey, just 1 second. Has anyone read Plato's Republic?
I'm the course of mention, right?
He just basically talked about how Plato said a land should be governed. We read it next year. Continue.
Night had now come on, and the governor, having eaten his supper by leave of Dr. Ratio, prepared to make his rounds, accompanied by the steward, the secretary, the butler, the chronicler, whose duty it was to record his deeds, and enough constables and clerks to make up a fair-sized battalion. Sancho walked in the middle with his wand of justice, a great sight to see. Now when they had patrolled a few of the town streets, they heard the clashing of knives, and, running to the spot, found no more than 2 men fighting. These broke off when they saw the law approaching, one of them crying, "Here in the name of God and the king, what? Are people to be attacked here and robbed and assaulted in the open streets?" "Be calm, my good fellow," said Sancho, "and tell me the cause of this quarrel, for I'm the governor." And that his adversary put in, "My lord governor, I will tell you very briefly. Your worship must know that this gentleman has just won more than 1,000 reals here in this gambling house opposite, God knows how. And I, who was a spectator, decided several doubtful throws in his favor, against all the dictates of my conscience. He got up with his winnings, and when I expected him to give me a crown at least as a fee, such as it's usual and customary to pay men of quality like myself, who stand by to judge fair play, and back up malpractice and prevent quarrels, he pocketed his money and left the house. I came after him in a rage, and requested him in fair and civil words to give me some 8 reals, for he knows that I am an honorable man, and have no profession or place, since my parents neither taught me a trade nor bequeathed me a post. But the rogue, he's a greater thief than Cacus, and a greater cheat than Andradilla, wouldn't give me more than 4 reals. So you see, my lord governor, what a shameless, conscienceless fellow he is. But I swear if your worship hadn't come, I would have made him cough up his winnings and taught him how to balance accounts.
Do you understand what happened? They're throwing dice. And I'm not exactly sure how it works, but you have to come up with certain
Waves.
numbers in order to win. And he kept winning. And this guy was one of the judges on the side, because sometimes, like, you know, the dice goes up against the side of the stair or whatever. So he said, I favored him in a couple doubtful throws. I said, oh, he got the throw that he was supposed to, so he won more money. So afterwards he said, it's customary for you to pay the judge a little bit of money, is like a tip, because the judge made in his favor and he won all this money. He won 1,000 reals and the guy wants 8 and the winner only gave him 4. All right, that's what's happening. What's Sancho gonna say?
What do you say to this? Asked Sancho. The other replied that his adversary was speaking the truth, but that he had not intended to give him more than 4 reals, because he was continually giving him something, and that men who expect tips must be polite and take what they get with a smile on their faces, and not haggle with winners unless they know for certain that they are sharpers, and that their gains are unfairly got. But there was no better proof of his honesty, and that he was no thief, as the other suggested, than his refusal to pay, for sharpers must always pay tribute to their accomplices. That's right, said the steward. Now consider, my lord governor, that what should be done with these men. This is what shall be done, answered Sancho. You, master winner, fair, foul, or indifferent, must pay your knight for 100 reals here and now, and disburse 30 more for the poor in the prisons. And you, who have neither place nor profession, and go idly about, must take these 100 reals at once, and tomorrow, no later, get out of this isle for 10 years' banishment, on pain of finishing your sentence in the next life if you break the ban. For I'll hang you on a gallows, or at least the hangman shall do it for me. And let no one reply, or he shall feel the weight of my hand. The one dispersed, the other took the money. The one left the aisle, the other went home, and the governor went on to say, "Now, if I'm good for anything, I'll put down these gambling houses, for I strongly suspect that much harm comes of them." "This one at least," said one of the clerks, "your worship won't be able to put down, because it's kept by a great personage, and his losses at cards every year are incomparably greater than his winnings. Your worship can show your power against other gambling dens of lower degree, for it's those which do the greatest harm and harbor the worst abuses. But the notorious sharpers dare not practice their tricks in gentlemen's and lords' houses, and since the vice of gambling has become a common habit, it's better for it to be practiced in houses of quality than at some tradesmen's, where they catch a wretch after midnight and flay him alive." "Yes, master clerk, I know there's much to be said on that score," replied Sancho. At this moment there came up a constable, who had hold of a youth, and he said, "Lord Governor, this young man was coming our way, but as soon as he spied the law, he turned round and began to run like a stag, a sure sign that he's a criminal. I went off after him, but if it hadn't been that he tripped and fell, I should never have caught him." "Why did you run away, man?" asked Sancho. "Sir, to avoid answering all those questions the constable asks," replied the youth. "What is your trade?" "A weaver." "And what do you weave?" "Iron heads for lances, so please your worship." "So you choose to be funny. Is it a buffoon you are? Very well, and where were you going just now?" "To take the air, sir." "And where do you take the air in this isle?" "Where it blows." "Good, you answer to the point. You're a clever one, my lad, but kindly reckon that I'm the air, and blow astern of you, and drive you into jail. Hold him there, and take him away, for I'll make him sleep there tonight, out of the air." "By God," said the lad, "your worship can no more make me sleep in prison than make me king." "Well, why can't I make you sleep in prison?" asked Sancho. "Haven't I power to arrest and discharge you whenever and as often as I please?" "However much power your worship may have," said the youth, "won't be enough to make me sleep in prison." "Why not?" demanded Sancho. "Take him at once where he'll see his mistake with his own eyes, and in case the jailer should use his interested liberality on his behalf, I'll make him go bail for 2,000 ducats that he won't let you stir a step out of the prison, my man." "This is all ridiculous," answered the youth. "The point is that no man shall make me sleep in the jail." "Tell me, devil," demanded Sancho, "have you an angel to release you and free you from the fetters that I shall have put on you?" "Now, my lord governor," answered the youth with a charming smile, "let us reason together and come to point. Suppose your worship orders me to be taken to a prison, and has me loaded with fetters and chains there and put in a cell, laying the jailer under heavy penalties to carry out your orders, and not let me out. All the same, if I don't wish to sleep, and stay awake all night without closing an eyelid, will your worship with all your power be able to make me sleep if I don't choose to?" "No, of course not," said the secretary. "The man has made out his case." "You would stay awake then?" asked Sancho, "only because it's your own will, and with no intention of crossing me?" "None, sir," said the youth, "none at all." "Then go, in heaven's name," said Sancho. "Go and sleep at home, and God give you sound sleep. I don't want to rob you of it, but I warn you not to make a mock of the law in future, for you may meet someone who will return you the joke on your skull." The youth went off, and the governor continued his rounds. Then shortly afterwards 2 constables came up, grasping a man, and said, "Lord Governor, this person looks like a man, but isn't. She's a woman, and no plain one, dressed up in a man's clothes."
Okay, time out. We're out of time until 11:10. I'll see you at 11:10.